I'm sure you guys know who Steven Crowder is. He is a conservative YouTuber here on YouTube. I've made a couple of videos on him already, but going to be talking about him in this video again. I don't have too much to say right here, but basically what I wanted to tell you guys is a little precursor to the kind of clips that I'm going to put together. But basically, Steven Crowder is a climate change denier. He's one of those people in the, who have no science degree, and regardless still decide to dispute the evidence and the facts that have been shown, with over 90% peer-reviewed articles saying that, climate change is real. But he says it's not consensus, it's about the evidence. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. The way that they get the consensus is off the evidence. And even let's concede that. Who the fuck are you to dispute this claim? 99% of peer-reviewed articles about climate change say that yes, climate change is man-made. And you, Steven Crowder, the dude from Fox News contributor, YouTube host, is here to argue with people who have gone to college for years getting a science degree. Who are you to dispute this evidence? Who are you? You can't. And he admits it too. He goes, yeah, I'd get destroyed by a climate change scientist. You would, dude. That's why you don't try and debate them. So the reason he does this is, I don't know if he genuinely believes this or not, but basically it fits his agenda. And it's the typical Republican agenda for whatever. I don't know why Steven Crowder would be anti-climate change. I mean, it makes sense for other people because, like, for example, like the Koch brothers, fracking, like, that fucks our shit up. It destroys our water, and it can cause things like earthquakes, and so for them it makes sense because that's their business. I don't know what business Steven Crowder has, but again, Republicans have been voting against their priorities since the beginning of time, or actually since FDR, I'll say, because that's when they flipped. But yeah, now you guys will see some clips of what I'm talking about. There are some evidence pieces I'm gonna piece together.
You still don't accept the science with all the politics and subjectivity stripped out, then you're still not a science denier, Steve, but you are someone who prefers to believe what he reads in blogs rather than accept what's published in the scientific literature.
The Antarctic ice sheets are actually growing by billions of tons per year.
Yes, that's according to a study by NASA. It says Antarctic ice is growing by 82 billion tons a year. And of course, researchers have a very good idea as to why that's happening. But of course, there are two major ice sheets on Earth. One is Antarctica, the other is Greenland. So now, let's hear the figure for Greenland.
According to the new analysis of satellite data, the Antarctic ice sheet showed a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice per year from 1992 to 2001.
Actually, the most recent figure is 82 billion tons a year, which you'll mention in a minute. But now give us the figure for the Earth's other ice sheet, on Greenland, so we can work out the net figure and see whether the myth is true or not.
So where does the myth come from that the ice sheets are melting? The net gain being the key words, slowed down to only 82 billion tons of
Greenland, Steve, you still haven't given us the figure for Greenland.
I know what you're thinking. Okay, numbers are relative.
No,
and billions,
I'm thinking, why do you
like
only give us the figure for one ice sheet that happens to fit your narrative that ice sheets aren't melting, but you won't give us the figure for the other ice sheet? So I'll do it myself. While Antarctica may be gaining ice to the tune of 82 billion tons a year, Greenland is losing ice to the tune of 269 billion tons a year. In other words, on a global scale, the ice sheets are indeed melting away at the rate of around 187 billion tons a year. That's a net melt of 187 cubic kilometers of ice every year. And if we add in glaciers and sea ice, the net melt is even larger.
So where does the myth come from that the ice sheets are melting?
Well, Steve, it comes from an appraisal of measurements taken of both ice sheets, not just the one you happen to read because it's been copied and pasted on the blogosphere.
The polar bears are dying off.
Okay. So what?
Truth. There are possibly more of these soulless killing monsters on Earth today than ever, certainly since we've begun monitoring them.
What's that got to do with the issue of whether the Earth is warming, whether carbon dioxide is the cause, and whether it'll cause stronger hurricanes, increased salination, droughts and floods, and sea level rise, and acidification of the oceans, and fewer coral reefs and more coastal erosion? Crowder tells us to go to his website for his source, which I did. It's a blog called factcheck.org. It says there has indeed been a rise in polar bear numbers since the 1970s. due mainly to legislation banning polar bear hunting. And it also says many scientists believe that due to climate change and resulting environmental factors, the trend is reversing. Now remember, this is Crowder's source, and funnily enough, he never mentioned any of this. Crowder's other source from which he got this graph is, of course, another blog. The blogger thinks numbers may be increasing, and she could be right. My policy is not to believe everything I read in blogs. But both of Crowder's sources agree on one thing: we simply don't know for sure. That's not my assessment. I haven't got a clue either. That's the assessment of the blogs Crowder cites. So despite his revealed truth that polar bear numbers are increasing, we can chalk that myth down to don't know. And as far as the question of whether carbon dioxide is the cause of global warming is concerned, the number of polar bears is totally irrelevant. Myth number 4.
Our current climate models are accurate.
Crowder doesn't actually address the myth he set up, but he does talk about a variety of other things.
We rely on a few organizations for these predictions, one of which is NOAA. They can't even accurately predict how many hurricanes there will be this year in Florida.
That's right, they can't. What a shame that wasn't the myth.
Over 300 scientists are imploring lawmakers to investigate NOAA.
Well, not quite. The list includes Christopher Monckton, who's a politician, and John Coleman, who graduated in media studies, and of course Tim Ball, who claims once again to have been a professor of climatology, when in fact he was a professor of geography. But anyway, these people claim NOAA wrongly adjusted temperature data in this 2015 paper. So why didn't these 300 signatories simply write a response paper pointing out what they saw as flaws in the NOAA methodology? Who knows? Whatever the reason, this still isn't the myth Crowder tasked himself with busting.
So many predictions being wrong, including, by the way, nearly all of the predictions made in Al Gore's Oscar-nominated And Inconvenient Truth.
Mistakes in Al Gore's movie is evidence that climate researchers got things wrong. Seriously, Steve?
Which predictions, to rattle off a few, like Mount Kilimanjaro as we addressed, the polar bears. North Pole still has ice.
But you can't then make the leap that because people get things wrong in the public media, that the science must therefore be wrong. Researchers can't be held responsible for the mistakes made by Al Gore and environmentalists any more than they can be held responsible for the mistakes made by the bloggers you use as sources.
But you can go back to the 70s and find other doomsday predictions, like global cooling.
But again, what's that got to do with climate researchers? Never mind the predictions made by movies, books, magazines, and individuals with the scientific acumen of Cheese Whiz. Let's deal with the predictions of real, actual climate researchers, as published in the scientific literature. Isn't that what you're trying to prove is wrong? The vast majority of published papers in the 1960s and 70s were predicting warming, not cooling, by a margin of 44-7. And the reason they gave for this predicted warming was increasing levels of CO2.
Due to our release through factories and automobiles every year of more than 6 billion tons of carbon dioxide, which helps air absorb heat from the sun, our atmosphere seems to be getting warmer.
This is bad?
Well, it's been calculated a few degrees rise in the Earth's temperature would melt the polar ice caps.
That isn't a recent propaganda message from Greenpeace. It was an educational film shown in schools and colleges in 1958. And of course, those predictions have proved 100% accurate. Ice sheets, glaciers, and sea ice are melting, and the rate of melt is accelerating. Temperatures have been rising to record levels, even when increased pollution and lower solar output should have been sending temperatures lower. Talk about a prescient prediction. So, notwithstanding the fact that Al Gore and assorted environmentalists often make wacky predictions that are wrong, as far as researchers in the field of glaciology, atmospheric physics, oceanography, geology, paleoclimatology, and all the other assorted disciplines that have built up this model are concerned, this myth is confirmed.
National or international government is the only entity capable of solving imminent climate change catastrophe.
Well, as I said at the beginning, that's not only a political question, it's tackling a problem that you say doesn't exist. So here's my suggestion for your next video, Steve. Address the issues you put up at the beginning. Is the Earth warming? Is carbon dioxide from fossil fuel burning the cause? Will the result be higher sea levels, stronger hurricanes, increased salination, drought and flood, acidification of the oceans, and coastal erosion? These are the things that matter to us because they'll affect our food supply, our infrastructure, and most importantly, our wallets. That matters more to people than the number of bloody polar bears. Put these questions up as myths and see if you can bust them. But don't just cite a blog and tell people Fred Blogger doesn't believe it, so that proves it's not true. You're an intelligent man. Dig a little deeper. Check the blogger's source and verify it. Find out what the science says by checking the scientific literature and see if there's a discrepancy or an explanation of why the blogger might have got his facts wrong. Look at all the evidence, not just the bits that give you the answer you want. With the deepest respect, talking louder doesn't mean you're better informed.